one is actually really fun. The only thing that you will feel possibly is for a while it doesn't look like it's building up. Simply because there's no, I mean, other than the little bit of the window and the railing, there's really nothing very that's really defining what's going on. So a lot of it is just with the little manipulations with the dark and bright colors. And that kind of builds as we go along. We're going to do a lot of wet on wet. So if you might feel at one point that working on it is a little bit tricky. So just work the most that you can during class. And then once it dries up a little bit, you can go back to it. But that's kind of what I noticed when I was working on it, that it just needed a few more periods. So the color palette is going to be a lot of reds and pinks. If you have the upper rows, that is great. But I also did use a lot of orange. And what the orange is going to do, it's really going to give it that contrast with that pink. And it just makes it really, really pop. I came in late last night, so I really did not have as much time as I wanted to work on this. I would just maybe darken the window a little bit, define some of the branches a little bit more, and maybe work a little bit more on the staircase. But for the most part, it's where it should be. So we have the pinks, and the pinks go to purples, and then they warm up to oranges and reds. We've got some variety of greens, and the greens sometimes go into the shades of blue. We have some warm tones in the building itself and the tree trunk. So it's a really, really pretty palette. And don't worry with the wet on wet if the colors mingle a little bit. I think for this one, it's actually going to work, especially in these areas over here and these over here, where you really have kind of a big mix of colors. And since we're not trying to keep an area like a solid color, it should work. So we are, let me just do one more check. Everybody in? Okay. So we are going to start. Okay, so here we have the finished one. I'm going to take this off. And again, I really like these blocks that have the paper sealed on the sides. Just need to open this. There's usually going to be like a little opening on the side. She's using something better than a scissor, but that'll do. And then it should peel right off. So it keeps it nice and straight. Some of them have just like one side sealed. I like this one, and this is a Strathmore. Oops, there we go. It's this one. It's a nice block. Okay. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with it's crooked. So this I can get it. Okay, so I started with what I see of the window and the balcony, just to kind of have a placement for them before I start with the flowers. So I am going to create a brown with a little bit of blue, just kind of going with those colors, kind of getting a slightly grayish color. And I want you to notice that there's a very slight angle. Now you don't have to do the angle. You can make them straight. You can make the line of the door, the French door, the window. You can make them straight, and also the balcony. But if you decide to do the angles, make sure that they're consistent. So either go with the angles and do it like all the way through and be very mindful of how the angles are sitting, or just mix them all together and just keep them straight. So I am going to start with the balcony, and I'm just gonna kind of place it. And you can see that there's just a slight slant to it, and it kind of sits in the middle. There's a very slight slant to it. So I'm just going to kind of place where it is. A lot of it is covered, but that's kind of the assumption that that's where it is. And then I am going to place the French door. Make sure that these lines are nice and straight, parallel. Go a little bit higher, and this just needs to be light enough to where you can see it. And then it starts kind of just going a little bit in the other direction. See, there's just a slight, very slight slant. A lot of it is covered, so if you don't, get it completely where it slants, it's going to be fine. Okay, I'm going to break it down into the shapes. This. And then we see a little bit of structure at the bottom. And then this actually has, you can see a little bit of the side. And that's a nice little detail that will give some depth to it. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to place what I see of the branches. So obviously we have these two big ones. I'm just going to take a brown and mix it with my previous concoction. And I'm just going to see they taper off. And detail them later. And this one is quite a strong one. Not sure if, I don't know if these are lines are supposed to be part of a branch, but I'm going to put it in. I have kind of a big bunch of them going over here. They don't have to be in that exact order, just will kind of give you some guidelines to where to put your bougainvillea flowers. You can use a thinner brush, but I'm going to detail them later, so I'm not that concerned. See, so just kind of over here. There's some here. You'll see more as you start working. Okay, I'm going to establish these lines. I think they're like, wires or something. I'm going to take a script brush, get 10 lines. I'm going to take some Payne's gray, put it with the brown, and I am going to just place this area where they kind of gather up. Put the ones that go this way. And I'm kind of just going to break my line so I can have the space for all the blooms. And again, these do not need to be steady lines at all. But I would not make them too dark at this point. Okay, so this is really my structure. So what I'm going to do is I am going to start working on the bottom part of this, and I am going to wet it. So anything under like the balcony, I'm going to wet it, and I'm going to start putting in all those beautiful colors that you see in there. Again, when you wet your paper, you don't want it to be puddled, otherwise you lose control over the colors. Okay. So on this side, I'm seeing some blues going into some browns, some grays, we've got the greens, the oranges, and I'm going to use this this dagger brush that I like, which is it has an angle, but it's a rounded angle, and it's just really nice for strokes. Or if you have just an angled brush, if you don't, I would just use a flat brush if you have it, and then if you don't, just use the best thing that you think you have. Okay, so I'm going to take some blue and realize that the blue is always going to be kind of strong. So I always test it out first and actually put it on top of that brown and blue combo that I had, just to kind of soften it. And I'm just going to put just strokes. I'm going to take a little bit of purple. That was too much purple. I'm going to take some warm brown. I'm going to take some little bit of golden color. I'm going to go back to the blue and gray. And just really let them kind of play around. Going more to the grays over here. Okay, I'm going to put these greens because they will look nice mixed in. I'm going to use the warm green. I'm going to take a little bit of brown on it. And I'm just putting little dabs. In some areas it's getting a little bit of blue-green, so I'm just going to put that. Again, I'm going with the brown because it's kind of in between. And it's totally fine if these kind of just mix in. Okay, I'm going to go back with the warm brown in here. A little bit warmer. And if this area dried, you can just wet it a little bit. And just make sure that you get all the areas that you want to have the color. So now we're starting to build into the red. So I'm going to take a deep red. I'm going to put quite a bit of it in here. I'm going to take purple. I'm going to take a touch of blue to get it to be intense. And I'm going back with red. As it moves up higher, it's getting some brightness. I'm going to use some of the opera rose. And I'm also going to give it a little hit of orange. And then the rest, whatever colors you're seeing in between, we see some greens. And like I told you earlier, just let them play around. It's fine. Okay, so now we're starting to move more into the pinks. So I'm just going to put just a little bit, just to kind of get it started. So I'm going to start working in this area over here. So this is getting a little bit darker, and we have a blue-green to browns. So I'm going to do all of them. So I'm going to wet just a little bit higher. And I'm wetting section by section so that I can control a little bit. I want a little bit of a separation between the pinks and then the greens underneath. So I'm going to take some of the cool green along with some of the warm green. I'm going to start. I'm just kind of putting it down in patches. Take a little bit of brown. Getting a little bit of a blue-green over here, maybe a touch of gray. And I'm just going to let it kind of slide in on the rest. Okay, I'm going to do this swipe over here. I'm going to take some brown. It's going to bleed a little bit, but it's going to highlight that part. Okay, I'm going to deepen this. I'm going to take some blue and some gray. I don't add it. I'm just going to put some of that blue. Okay. So remember, at this point, these are all, you're just laying out ground colors. And that's kind of what's going to take the most time. The detailing is very quick because you're really just going to go in and darken just little dots in little areas. So it's really all about laying these colors. So I'm going to start placing these blooms in here. Wetting the area. And I'm going to start with, from the top, I'm going to put the pinks. And take a little bit of red. So really the idea is that in this little section here, you want to put as much variation of color, but I started kind of from the light to the dark. The bases are a little bit darker, and I'm using a little bit of purple along with the deep red. Okay, I'm gonna let you work on that for a minute. I have like a weird sound going off in the house, but let me just go check. Zane? 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 Can you come here, please? Come here, please, quick, quick. Sorry about that. We're getting our pool fixed and I don't know, something's not happy. Okay. So this is good over here. I'm going to work a little bit on the door. So I'm going to take some Payne's Gray, touch of brown, and I am going to just define these a little bit. You can straighten them later, just try to get the overall general angle. Maybe a little bit more blue. Down, combination of gray and blue, a little bit of brown. So here we have the bougainvillea coming in, so I'm just gonna dab that off just a little bit. Okay. I'm gonna put in the soft terracotta that I have up here. And also I'm gonna put this really nice reflection that we have from all the pinks kind of on the side. And notice there's a slight angle over here. I'm gonna take a little bit of blue. So have the pink on this. Okay, so I'm going to continue with the pinks up here. So again, mix of the hot pink, darker pinks, maybe a little bit of purples. And when you do this, don't, press the brush down because otherwise it'll look splotchy. So just make sure they're little brush strokes. Put a little bit of orange for brightness. Just make sure that you vary them. The more you vary, the more depth you're going to have, and the less detail work you're going to have to do later. Okay, so I think we can start. I didn't completely wet the background. I don't feel that it needs it, but I would just go and want to do some of these shadows. So it's like a very pale, almost like a mushroom color. So I'm going to take just a little bit of purple with some brown. And I'm just going to give just some light washes over here. I mean, you could wet this whole area, but I think, especially for us trying to get work done within the hour, it's better that we just use just sections. Okay, so I'm going to continue working. I'm going to put some of the greens down. I have my nice bright warm green. I'm going to take a little bit of yellow, give it more brightness in some spots. And I'm just going to go ahead and put most of the green that I'm seeing. Again, I'm going to vary it a little bit, put maybe a touch of brown. Just have it have different values. Kind of just let your eye find the green. So there It's getting a little bit brighter. A little bit more blue-green. Of course, as you start building, you will probably see some more. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the really deep areas of almost like that burgundy that we're seeing. So I'm going to offer up the painting. So I'm going to take some of this deep red, and take some purple, take some blue, and I'm going to take some of this blue-green because this really kind of deepens. Look at how nice and deep this color is. Almost like an eggplant. So that will go, we have a little bit of it here. You can add a little bit of water if it's too strong. Okay, so I'm going to add just a little bit of red to the side. Get the one that's just a little bit lighter. And so when you do this, just make sure that you leave some gaps so you can add the other shades and tones of the color. It's getting too purple, just you can work it in a different section. Okay, so now I'm going to go to a red, a little bit brighter red. Put it in. Just anywhere where you're seeing that bright red. You can see with every step, it's starting to build. And when you start adding the reds and the oranges and the warmer colors, just just make sure that you kind of look and see where those are, because if you can see, there's not a lot of them here. They're mostly like concentrated, like this section, a little bit over here, and in this cluster up here. It kind of just seems to go more to the pinks on the other side. Okay, so let's go tackle some of the opera rose. And also, to get a variation of it, you can take just a little bit of purple. Also get yourself one more note of color. And let the areas breathe, so you can go in and more color. going to switch to a round brush. I'm needing to work on slightly smaller areas. I'm going to go back to the greens. If you see it getting more yellow, just add a little bit of gold or yellow, like over here. Okay, so I'm gonna just give this area a little bit more contrast. That deeper blue-green. So again, don't cover what you have, let it breathe through. And here we're getting a really deep area. I'm gonna use it too. It made a nice difference. Just whatever colors you're seeing in this area, just kind of pump them up a little bit. Let them go into the pinks. It's fine. And just make sure that you have a range of tones from dark to light. And that's what's going to give it the illusion of that detail. So I'm going to take some Payne's gray, some brown. And see, it builds up really nicely. You just have to be patient with it, because for a while it just looks like it's really fuzzy. That's not having a lot of detail. So I'm going to start a little bit on the balcony, just wherever it's dry enough to work. Again, it has that slight angle. Just make sure that these lines are parallel to your page. And see, I'm not putting the brown all the way through. It's almost has like a haze on it. So Okay, I'm going to rework the branches over here. If you still see yours visible, you can use them as a guide, or you can, mine kind of got washed out. But sometimes I'll put down things that do get washed out, but I kind of like to know where they are, or just putting them down kind of helps me navigate throughout a composition. Okay, there's a little bit of brown over here. I'm gonna put. Some Payne's gray. Okay, I'm going to go back to my pinks. And if you notice that your tones are too close together, just maybe add a drop of purple, a drop of red, and just get yourself a little bit more of a variety with the pinks. And also, one of the things that will make them look scattered and not look like flowers is that if you have too much white in between the flowers. So make sure that the white is only where you need it. Sometimes just, just little drops go a long way. Say that they gave a really nice detail over here. Do that here. Taking some of this reddish brown, deep, almost like a burgundy brown. See, it's really lifting everything. Again, see, this is such nice ground to build color and just add swipes of color. So you don't want to cover those colors completely, let them play through. They will definitely add to the three-dimensional illusion. Specks of really dark. Come back with this little bit of gold in here. Okay, I'm going to go into some of these branches. Doing Payne's gray with some brown. And make sure that you cut them where there's clusters of flowers, let them go behind. So again, just depending on what, got lost in the wet on wet, you might need to go back and just give some areas just one more go of darkening the lines. Brush. This area can use one more. The branches a little bit more definition. Okay, so I'm gonna go back, take my dagger brush, and I'm gonna just do some hits of color all throughout. So I'm going to take some of this warm. Really, this is what I like this brush for, because it can just give you some nice strokes that are not too sharp because of the rounded edge. They kind of just give it like a really cool softness. You could also do a bit of a line if you wanted to. See, I really like that. A little bit of green. So again, it's called the dagger brush. And because it's long, I mean, it'll give you a lot of mileage. Like you can do more than one stroke with it. And you can also go over some of the areas and just deepen that color. It's also great for like grouping an area. If you're trying to get rid of, some of the white, you just go. I'm gonna take some of this golden color and I'm just gonna give just a few hits. Like there's just a slight kind of shade of that in parts of the structure. this in here. It's really fun. There's, you know, you could just really go on for a long time getting this to build. Okay, so now I'm going to take a thin little brush, and I'm going to take a Payne's Gray. I'm just going to go in like key little areas that have the darkness or that could use a little bit of detail. It's probably best to do this when everything is dry, but and in some areas you can go a little bit lighter with the gray. Some of this got covered. I wanted to show I could go. I don't really think there's anywhere that I would necessarily use black, but I think that the Payne's Gray is dark enough. The areas that need a little bit more brown with it, you can put some brown with the Payne's Gray. And of course, these little thin brushes don't go a long way. You just have to constantly refill the color. At this point, any areas that you see that could use a bit more dark detail. It's a script. Script. And again, if you need help with the brushes, you want the names, just text me or email me, and I'm happy to give you the specs on them. But really having good brushes can help you become a much better painter. It's worth it. Let's see this. And see, every time you add the little kind of darker areas, they give the illusion of, of detail happening. Brave to do like one big swipes. And I think that's it. It could use some more work. Like I told you, I think this is one that's a good idea to kind of, let things dry a little bit. Or let's see both of them. Okay. Any thoughts? Any questions? Fun and easy? No? Yes? Takes a while to build. Have you felt that it takes time to build? No?
Yes.
What were the challenges on this one? Any challenges?
I still have a hard time putting down the right amount of water at the beginning.
Oh, okay. So really your paper should just glisten. You shouldn't have
Yeah.
any puddles.
Right. I just can't. It's
So
either too
really
little
you're
or
just like wetting it. Like you just want it to be like when you look at it like that, when you flip it, it's gonna glisten, but the water should not be moving around.
yeah.
If it is, then mop it up with a brush or with a tissue. And I mean, that you will get right. I think using like a big brush to do it is helpful. And like a flat brush will definitely help you spread it and won't give you, because it doesn't hold as much as like a round brush does.
Oh, okay.
So
That's
this
a good,
holds less,
you
so
know
you
what,
will
that's a
not
good
be putting
hint.
as. Yeah. Any questions? Anyone want to show us?
It's going to take a long time to finish, but start from the bottom up, but that's about it.
Yeah, it does take some time. It took me some time to get it to build, but really the key is if you put a lot of variety of colors in the beginning and a lot of different shades, it really cuts the detailing time in half. And then just make sure that your really dark areas are in the right place, because that's what's gonna just give you that three-dimensional
Yeah,
quality. So, yeah, I mean, this one is kind of hard to overwork, because I think just the more you add to it, just the more everything is gonna settle in, and you're gonna get more depth in the painting. So, anyone want to show us? Not today?
beautiful.
No? Okay.
It's hard to see.
All right, so send me your paintings, take your time with them, and let me know if you have any questions, and if you have any questions about the brushes or project today, and I will see you on Wednesday.